Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, of course, let me extend my personal birthday wishes to the Deputy Speaker and member for Miko North. I think he knows we're all waiting for that celebration later. So I trust Parliament is well prepared, Mr. Speaker. Also, my colleagues who welcome the presence of the member for Castries Southeast. We all know what he is going through, and it was really inspiring to see him in Parliament, ensuring that he keeps his commitment to report to the people who gave him the power to be here and to represent them. Of course, Mr. Speaker, later today, I will be attending the celebration of the life of an outstanding Labour Party stalwart, Bianca Alexander, from Castries South, top of the Mon. She's had a long, distinguished association with the Central Labour Party, having been a platform speaker, canvasser, member of my women's group. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a day when we really have to reflect on, our contributions to politics and what it means. And certainly she is somebody who made a contribution that we're all proud of, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to express my support for the estimates presented by the member from Castries East and Prime Minister. I'm also pleased to address this debate as the duly elected parliamentary representative for Castries South and Minister of Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture, Information and Broadcasting. I start by thanking the Almighty for yet another year of service to the people of my constituency and country. I'm eternally grateful to my constituents, constituency group, women and youth groups. They have chosen me to represent Castries South, a very special constituency. It is the birthplace of the St. Lucia Labour Party and the constituency of our founding leader, Sir George F.L. Charles. It is also the constituency of outstanding leaders such as John Stanley Odlum and His Excellency Dr. Robert K. Lewis. My constituents and groups are my strength. I know, Mr. Speaker, sometimes they are annoyed with me and sometimes even disappointed. But we both know that the love is real and deep. I know, Mr. Speaker, of their commitment to the dream that we will transform Castries South. And believe me, we will achieve this dream. Castries South will never be the same again after this term of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Never, Mr. Speaker. We promise to make George F.L. Charles, John Odlum and Robert Lewis proud of our stewardship. I'm also grateful, Mr. Speaker, for the support of my permanent secretary and the staff of the ministry. They have been outstanding in their dedication, support, and hard work, and so much so that it inspires me every day to work harder. I'm also thankful to the boards, management, and staff of the Citizenship by Investment Program, Invest St. Lucia, Cultural Development Foundation, St. Lucia Tourism Authority, the Community Tourism Agency, and Events Company of St. Lucia, which all fall under my leadership and oversight. I must single out the board members. These dedicated professionals all give so much of their time and effort to ensure the proper functioning of the agencies which they oversee. Mr. Speaker, the presentation by the member from Castries East on the estimates for the financial year 23-24 was a masterclass, Mr. Speaker. It was. I sat and I listened, and I felt proud to be part of this team, to be part of this government under the leadership of Honorable Philip J. Pierre. Mr. Speaker, it was an estimate for the time. It is a reflection of what we need at this present period in our history. And last night when I got home, before I fell asleep, I tried to imagine if we were in opposition and the leader of the opposition had been Prime Minister and had presented such estimates, how would we have responded to it? How would I want to respond to it? And I must tell you, I had an extreme difficulty trying to figure out exactly how would I have attacked these estimates. Because you cannot be vexed and annoyed and criticize raising more revenue than you expected. You cannot be annoyed and criticize a government that paid down so much on the debt that has been crippling this country. You cannot criticize a government that has done so much to put the people first with practical programs. You cannot criticize a government that has sought to control and curtail excessive spending. What would you criticize? Just tell me, Mr. Speaker. But I want you to reflect, Mr. Speaker, for a moment on what is the challenge facing this government at this time. The Minister of Finance has 3 objectives for every decision that he makes in terms of the fiscal and financial management of this country. First of all, he must stabilize the economy. But whilst he's stabilizing the economy, he has to ensure that there is a path of sustained growth and development. So he's stabilizing, but whilst he's stabilizing, he must make sure there's a sustained path of growth. But not just growth, but growth with equity. So it's not just speaking of the economy grew by 12% or 10%, but he must make sure that that growth trickles down and that so many people benefit from it. So there must be growth with development. And at the same time, he must provide immediate short-term relief to the people. So think about that. How do you achieve all 3 objectives at the same time? Stabilize the economy. That means reducing debt. It means generating a surplus. And one other things, at the same time, make sure there is growth, because you must have growth for the country to prosper. But even in the country getting richer through growth, we must make sure as many people also benefit from it. So that's why you have the MSME and the youth economy and the CTA. And then at the same time, we must take care of our people. How can he do that? But what he did in his presentation, in a masterful way, is to show how he's achieving it. We cannot boast we've achieved all of them per excellence, but in his presentation, he showed you how every single one was being achieved. And under the policy statement, we will examine this in greater detail. This time it was just the figures. And Mr. Speaker, I want to point out, and you and I have had discussions on this, and maybe the member from Beaufort South, who is very learned on those matters, I still believe we are doing this thing backward. We really have to say what's the policy, the rationale. When it is approved by the House, the technical people put the figures to it, and then we debate the figures. We are debating the figures, but we cannot really debate why we have the figures as they are. We have to debate the figures, approve it, and then after we come and we approve the policy that guided the figures we already approved. You and I have had debates about that over the years, and we've not agreed. But it's something, and I still believe the English Parliament has it right. You do the policy first and then the figures. Because many times you want to explain why the figures are there, but you have to leave that for the policy debate. But I contrast, Mr. Speaker, what the member from Castries East did with what we got yesterday from the member from Mico South and the leader of the opposition. You must contrast it. And maybe the failings of the member from Mico South must be excused. Maybe. Because I started off by showing you how difficult it would have been to criticize what was presented by the member for Castries East. He had an extremely difficult task. But these are the moments when he has to rise to the occasion and to show his real worth as a leader, Mr. Speaker. And I think he failed miserably. The member from Strozel Saltibus tried in his own way to ask questions, and valid questions, and I'll provide him with some answers today. But rather than the member from Mico South and leader of the opposition, asking questions and exploring alternatives, he got low, dirty, and in the trenches. That's what he did, Mr. Speaker. He tried his best, Mr. Speaker, to be a drama queen in the hope of attracting attention. Then he tried, Mr. Speaker, to show that he had empathy, hoping that people will believe that he cares. And when none worked, Mr. Speaker, he got disrespectful, and then he finally walked away with his ball because, Mr. Speaker, he was too scared to stay in the chamber and to get a response to all the things that he said. But give me a few minutes, Mr. Speaker, if you may, for me to just reflect on a couple points before I go into the substance of the estimates as it relates to my ministry. The member from Miku South claimed that we don't care because we earn more money from excise tax than we expected. That we did not earn as much as we wanted from the excise tax on petroleum, but overall we earned more than we expected. And that we did not care about people. And he wanted to chastise us, Mr. Speaker, that we don't care about people. And I want you, Mr. Speaker, to just look at our record for the last 18 months. Not an exhaustive look. Just look at some of the things we've done for the last 18 months. Not the continuation of existing programs, but the commencement of new initiatives. And tell me, Mr. Speaker, whether that's a reflection of a government that does not care. One of the first things we did, we got elected July 26. Immediately, Mr. Speaker, under the leadership of the member for Denry North, Mr. Speaker, Minister of Education, we increased the back-to-school support. I cannot speak of a very long period in Parliament, but for my 5 years in opposition, I can tell you, I got nothing near what I got for my back-to-school program. And I know from some of my other colleagues, they said they had never gotten so much support to assist their constituents to help children go back to school immediately, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And why? Because we knew of the effects of COVID on working people in this country and even the middle class. Even the middle class. Immediately, within weeks, Mr. Speaker, we found the money, Mr. Speaker, to provide support for back to school. Immediately, Mr. Speaker, immediately, the Prime Minister made monies available for us to purchase food vouchers and to distribute them. And I hope the member from Strozel do get vouchers when they are made available, Mr. Speaker. Again, not enough. I agree with you, Honorable Member. I don't get enough. I must tell you. You know, Honorable Member, you are right. I still believe I don't get enough. And I was jealous that Babuno seemed to have gotten more than me. But that's another story. But Mr. Speaker, immediately, Mr. Speaker, without even earning those excess revenue in excise tax, monies were made available. Then the Minister of Education, the member of Denry North, with the Prime Minister, decided that school fees is an issue that has to be dealt with. And they were right. Too many times parents come to us, children cannot graduate because they owe the school fees. And that it's a problem. And we knew it was COVID. And we knew for a lot of those students, they would not have been able to pay school fees for the last 2 years. How would they graduate? And immediately, Mr. Speaker, we made sure that all school fees are paid in the public schools. That's for a government that do not care, Mr. Speaker. Then, Mr. Speaker, the price of flour started to rise. First, supply chain issues, and then later on, the war between Ukraine and Russia, the two largest producers of wheat in the world, Ukraine and Russia. And the price of flour started to rise. What did we do? We subsidized it, Mr. Speaker. subsidize it. And I think the member from Sufre said, presently, $94 on every bag is being subsidized by government. I'm sure I heard that figure. If I'm wrong, I can be corrected. $94 on every bag that is sold, government puts in. Think about it. And we don't care, Mr. Speaker, that we have excess excise tax and we are wasting it, Mr. Speaker. Subsidized fuel, Mr. Speaker. When the price was getting so high, we tried to maintain it, and we provided the subsidy until it became unsustainable, and we had to allow it to shift, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the laptop per child, in all the difficulty that we were facing because of COVID, think about it. How would the children really learn when you're doing virtual learning if they did not have laptops? Because the laptops had been stopped by the previous government. And yes, they provided e-books. Let's not debate whether they worked or they did not work, but they were not really suitable. And we got complaints from thousands of parents that it was just not working for them. And someday, Mr. Speaker, our education officials will have to do a study on the effect on COVID on the learning of children in this country. 2 lost years, Mr. Speaker. And if they had laptops, maybe it would have been mitigated. And what did we do? We commenced immediately the program of 1 laptop per child. And we are a government that do not care. And that the leader of opposition, in his pretense, was so incensed, he almost threw the podium over because he claimed we spent $1 million on repairing something. I can't remember what it was. And then, Mr. Speaker, when we had provided the laptops, we felt we had to ensure that families that could not have internet had to have internet. And we approached the telecom companies only to find out from them that they had submitted to the previous government proposals for telecommunication services to poor families, and nothing had been done about it. Nothing had been done about it. That had been an outstanding program on the desk of the last government during COVID, when poor people needed to have internet for the children to learn. What did we do? We finalized the negotiations, and we now have the Flow bundle where you can get internet, you can get your landline and cable TV for $20 a month. And we are a government that do not care, Mr. Speaker. Do not care. The distress fund, Mr. Speaker. Immediately we restored the distress fund. From the same person who says we do not care was the one who stood up in this honorable house and said we do not need a distress fund because people are supposed to insure their plywood homes. Go and find insurance. Now, Mr. Speaker, how do you insure a plywood house? Tell me, really. That's what he said, Mr. Speaker. And he stopped the distress fund, started by the member for Beaufort South. We restored it, Mr. Speaker, because too many poor people needed help after a fire, and they could not get it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 18 months, we've started the 1 scholarship per household program. And how many scholarships have we given, Honorable Member? Over 200 scholarships so far has been given by this government. Both SLASPA, SAFA, and university. In less than 18 months, Mr. Speaker. And you know, it is specific because we are saying this has to go to households where nobody in that household has had a chance to get tertiary education. Think about that, how transformational that is. Families where they have not had anyone who's gone to university to get a degree or to go to tertiary, have any tertiary education, we've given over 200 in less than 18 months, and we don't care. Speaker, we launched a community tourism agency. What is it all about? It's about saying that resort-based tourism cannot be the future of tourism in our country. The future of tourism has to be community-based experiences where the visitors can come into the communities and to spend and enjoy all that St. Lucia has to offer. And we've put in, Mr. Speaker, over $15 million in that program. We are giving loans and grants to people who cannot qualify for financing. Never before in the history of St. Lucia. And that exists now, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. We've launched the MSME, Mr. Speaker, a couple of weeks ago under the Ministry of Commerce to make monies available to micro enterprise to help them sustain themselves and to get going, Mr. Speaker. Transformational, all within 18 months, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. We've launched a youth economy agency. I can take my entire hour to speak about the youth economy and what it means to young people in St. Lucia. And we do not care, Mr. Speaker. We don't care. I can speak, Mr. Speaker, about support to the police because we do face challenges in the communities. This did not start in July 2021, but we've given the police support in a short space of time like never before, and we don't care, Mr. Speaker. Increasing subvention to civil society. You heard the Prime Minister last year and again this year, restoring the subvention to the National Trust. And we don't care, Mr. Speaker. Think about it, in less than 18 months. But compare that with a member from Miku South. How much money did we pay Range? An investor who came into this country to build a hotel ends up leaving with about $30 million. Did he care? Think of what that money could have done. And he contests is not 30, it's less than 30. But whether it's 30, it's 20, it's 10, it should never have happened. And if you cared, you would make sure it did not happen. Health City came on, Mr. Speaker. Health City came on in the middle of COVID. When everybody is concerned about taking care of people who are affected by COVID, you would pay $1 million a month for 24 months to give us consultancy on how to manage a hospital. And you care? $24 million when we had a local committee managing the transition aided by the French, and you cared, Mr. Speaker? The same person who closed the fisheries that have decimated the fisheries sector, Mr. Speaker. Today, fishermen are not even the same. Close Radio St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And you know what we have done? You can go online now, and Radio St. Lucia is being broadcast right now. Right now. And our plan is, it may not, there's online, same 99.5. And we're hoping by the estimate, by the policy statement, we will be broadcasting for all of St. Lucia. Hopefully, Mr. Speaker. Somebody who cares will pay out $7 million for vaccines without no systems in place as to whether we will even receive the vaccines. And my last meeting, I joined the Prime Minister. He was still arguing and fighting for the balance of the money to be paid to St. Lucia. And he cares. He cares. I won't even speak about Carbot and DSH, Mr. Speaker. I won't. Mr. Speaker, I heard him, the member, speak about Julian Alfred, Mr. Speaker. You know, and it's painful, painful. The member from Denry North was crucified. It was claimed how he used the resources of National Lodges Authority. But he was using it to help young people like Julian Alfred. When the United West Party came into power in 2016, they stopped it, Mr. Speaker. And I know the details because she's a constituent of mine. She doesn't live far from my constituency office. And I'm not going to go into all the details today. Leave that for another time, and I'm sure the member from Denry North can deal with it better. But Mr. Speaker, he will claim how we say we want to do things for Julian Alfred when we could not even have helped her in university. She has a scholarship in university, and she's still at university, but when she needed it in Jamaica, you cut $150 a month support for her. Think about that, Mr. Speaker, and you tell me that you care, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the member from Miku South took the estimates yesterday in a very malicious way. He's going through it and pointing out where you're supposed to have strategies and achievements and how it's empty. That means you all did nothing. Mr. Speaker, That's a feature of all estimates. A feature of all estimates. Some ministries give you detailed narratives of all their objectives and all their achievements, and some don't submit it on time. And the estimates are printed, and it's not contained. I used to laugh at the last government when I used to go through the estimates and realize some of them are empty. But I'm not going to use that as the substance of my rebuttal to the Minister of Finance. That's the substance. Seriously? Come on, let's be real. Let's be real about that. Maybe the member from Strozel can teach him a thing or two. Because you know what the member from Strozel did? He looked at it, he saw an allocation, he saw what the objective was, how many passports would be processed, and he says, but not processed, housing. And he said there must be an error in that, because if you had spent that amount for this, you could not have done X, Y, and Z. That's more constructive. That's constructive. But that's not what he does. He looks at grants and contributions, and he says, look at tourism. Your grant moved from 12 million to about 23 million. Just wasting money. Yeah, it's money. But the Prime Minister in his presentation did say that tourism allocation has been increased to 8 million. Events company will get 4.5 million for jazz. When you add it, it's the exact difference. All he has to do is to go to a page in the estimates. I don't think he even knows how to read the estimates books. I don't think he knows how to read it. Because all he had to do was go to the grants and contribution page. He would see in 2022 to 2023 what was listed, and for this year what's listed. And he would see a difference. Simple. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be any economist or mixed degree, whatever he is, to be able to do that, Mr. Speaker. It's a simple process. And Mr. Speaker, he speaks about CIP monies being spent on consultancies. And I just wanted to share with you, Mr. Speaker, just a little data about CIP monies and how they were spent. Because, you know, he's saying a lot of things. Just to give you an idea, Mr. Speaker, of CIP monies and how they were spent. Mr. Speaker, for example, if I take you to, I'll give you just the last year, Mr. Speaker. Flower subsidy, $8.9 million. Same person who said we could have used the money to subsidize, and chastising we did not do it. It was done, 8.9 million, Mr. Speaker. Fuel subsidy, $4.97 million. Back pay in December 2022, 6 million. Back pay in March 2023, 11.5 million. And Mr. Speaker, contributed $34 million to debt payment, Mr. Speaker. You know, it doesn't take much, Mr. Speaker, to just ask. But you're accusing and claiming that you used to spend CIP money for projects in St. Lucia. Now everybody knows that's not true. I'm not saying that monies were used improperly or anything. But I know we used to come to this house over and over, and we all knew that the money was going to deal with recurrent expenditure. So he now comes and accuses us of doing exactly what he was doing. Because there's a saying that evil says what evil does. So he's saying that's what we're doing, because that's what he used to do. That's what he used to do. But another policy statement will say some more about CIP, because we're going to take our CIP to an entirely different level, where it can now start building housing projects, start building roads, and be used directly to benefit the people of St. Lucia. But I will leave that for the Prime Minister to make the statement and for me to elaborate on it. But Mr. Speaker, let me end on the member from Miku South. And this one was hurtful yesterday. Hurtful, and I'll tell you why. When the member from Miku South described a young woman who's an entrepreneur in this country and who purchased lands as a non-entity, who has done nothing in her life, that one is probably the worst statement ever made by the member for Miku South.
Yes. Speaker, I don't know if the member would...
Member for Strozel?
I don't know if the member would allow me to rise in the point of elicitation.
Please, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, When we left Parliament yesterday, I called the leader of the opposition and I indicated to him my discomfort in the expression that has been indicated by the member. And he indicated to me that that was not what he meant. He indicated to me that he meant that the person was a non-business entity. Whether or not the government would want to take it for that, but I should express exactly what he said to me, and I thought it was necessary to indicate that. Because the expression was, in my mind, very discomforting to me at the time, and I had to express it.
You know, member from Strozel, I'll continue my point, but let me just say to you, I admire your commitment to your party, to your team. But, honorable member, this does not make sense. It does not make sense. I know you probably feel you're obligated to say it, but let me just say to you, it does not make sense. Because she being a business entity is nonsensical, Mr. Speaker. He said she was a non-entity who had done nothing in her life as yet. You know, Mr. Speaker, in this honorable house, we have at least 3 other persons who were prime ministers, or one is a prime minister. In the case of the member from Catrice North, I've known him many years and his commitment to youth and young people. We've spent many hours together working on youth programs, youth projects, and I know his commitment to youth and promoting youth. The present Prime Minister, just by his initiative, the youth economy, tells you about his commitment to young people in this country. The former Prime Minister, Dr. Anthony Fort South, I have never met anybody I've felt more committed to promoting young people. I can tell you that. Because of the opportunities he gave persons like myself and so many other young people. 3 other Prime Ministers, all have been committed to promoting youth and the cause of young people. And for the member from Miku South to stand, regardless of whether he thought she had not achieved anything in the business world, to describe her as a non-entity that has done nothing in her life is disgraceful, is disgusting, and we must decry it, Mr. Speaker. That there's no compromise on this, Mr. Speaker. None. You know, Mr. Speaker, I don't even want to quote his maybe I'll read exactly what he said. So I want to say this. First of all, Mr. Speaker, to have sold that land to a non-entity, nobody knows her. Who is she? Has she done any work in St. Lucia? Mr. Speaker, this is a young person, a young entrepreneur, a young lady, Mr. Speaker. And of all his comments, jackasses, backing dogs, I think this one is the most disrespectful one, Mr. Speaker. But let me move on, Mr. Speaker, and refer to page 357, subheading 072, Tourism Marketing Services, Mr. Speaker. St. Lucia Tourism Authority is being provided with $8 million, Mr. Speaker, for extra budgetary support for marketing for this financial year. Mr. Speaker, the St. Lucia Tourism Authority was funded via an approved budget under the tourism levy in the amount of $25,700,000 in estimates for this financial year, and a government subvention of $5 million. So they got a total of $30,700,000. The St. Lucia Tourism Authority anticipates a projection of collection in excess of the approved budget, totaling $28 million. In fact, they expect to collect, Mr. Speaker, $2.3 million more, Mr. Speaker. And that clearly states to you that the tourism industry is doing even better than we expected, Mr. Speaker, and earning above the projected amount, Mr. Speaker. So whilst, Mr. Speaker, the thrust of the government is to ensure that the tourism authority is to be dependent on the tourism levy, the government of St. Lucia wishes to broaden the use of the levy. Therefore, the levy will be used, Mr. Speaker, to support tourism development projects such as the community tourism program. place specific focus on marketing our creative industry and culture, including the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival, our cultural festivals, and the need for us now to engage in some strategic planning and strategic marketing, Mr. Speaker. And it's for that reason that this government has increased the subvention to $8 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Tourism Authority, as I said, is recording better than expected results, Mr. Speaker. And one of the reasons why St. Lucia is one of the success stories in the Caribbean is because of what the authority has done in the last year. It has launched what it called Collection des Pépites, Mr. Speaker, a collection of villas, hotels, beds, Mr. Speaker, Cabaret Crawl, Mr. Speaker, Lucian Links, Mr. Speaker, a number of initiatives to ensure that St. Lucia stays in the forefront, Mr. Speaker. In the policy statement, I will speak a lot more about the numbers and the arrivals. But it was interesting yesterday to hear the member from Miku South say on one hand that the tourism industry is faltering, Mr. Speaker. It's faltering, that we are losing flights. And then the member for the senator, former Minister of Tourism, was on television and saying how St. Lucia was losing flights and our tourism industry was in jeopardy, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, the industry is performing better than we expected. Better than we expected. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we have lost some flights. And again, in the policy statement, I will go into detail. But what is interesting is that with even less seats, we have more people coming in. Wow. Can you imagine that? Less seats. Where we are really suffering, Mr. Speaker, is regional travel. Regional travel. In 2019, we had about 88,000 regional arrivals. Last year we had just over 45,000 or so. And if we had a kind of regional travel, Mr. Speaker, it would have been so much better for us. So we have lost some flights for true, Mr. Speaker. Those flights were put on, and let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, in the policy statement I'll go into greater detail. Those flights were put on because many countries had not opened up yet. And therefore there was excess capacity from some airlines and they put on additional flights. And what I noted in the data, because Mr. Speaker, we would go and do our research. We on this side, we take our business seriously and we do our research. In all the flights that were withdrawn, St. Lucia was the last destination to lose it because we had been doing so well. So we have less seats, but we have more people coming in. We are earning more money from the levy than we had anticipated. And truth be told, Mr. Speaker, you can see throughout the length and breadth of this country that the tourism industry is not dying in St. Lucia. It is not, Mr. Speaker. And then we were told that fares are too high. And last week, I happened to have been at Roots America, and we met with one airline. And our opening line was, "We get too many complaints about you." And the airline asked us, I can tell you it was JetBlue, "What's the complaint?" We said, "Well, the airfare, everybody's complaining they cannot travel the airfare." And the guy opened his computer and embarrassed us. He said, after bringing up his file, that March 2023 was the best month ever for JetBlue in St. Lucia. Their load factor was 95%. So he asked us, so who's complaining? Because more people are traveling at those high rates than ever before. Now, it really tells you what's happening in the market. You don't have to be any guru economist to understand what's happening. People are buying the tickets, even at the high rates. So do you expect them to drop their rates? If 95% load factor, why would you drop your rates? You're not 55% load factor, you're 95. So they have no interest in dropping their rates. And they will not bring on an additional flight to now cause their rates to drop. At some point, the numbers will be sufficiently high that they will bring on another flight, but we've not reached that point yet. But Mr. Speaker, in addition to we winning the world's leading honeymoon destination, for the first time ever, we won the Caribbean leading adventure destination. Now, Is that the sign of a destination where tourism is faltering? But after having said all the criticisms, he then says, He then says, all these high numbers they're boasting of is we that cause it to happen. So on one hand, the industry is suffering and we're on the decline. But yet the high numbers you all have is because of UWP hard work. But let me just tell you something about statistics, Mr. Speaker. And it's something we have to note. In the latter years, the last 2 years of the Labour Party, that's between 2014, 2016, there was a slight decline in tourism arrivals. And the former minister, Lawrence Theophilus, was crucified for it. But nobody cared to say that St. Lucia's largest hotel, Club St. Lucia, had closed. So you took away 300 rooms out of the room stock. Obviously your numbers will decrease. Now the members from the previous government were boasting of the increases from about 2018, but they did not say that Royalton had opened and Harbour Club had opened, putting in about 400 plus rooms into the room stock. So, but they don't say that. But they will say, oh, under the Labour Party numbers will drop in, and then the UWP all of a sudden numbers are rising. But there is a reason for that. I'm not saying hard work was not done by the Tourism Authority and the former minister. I would never say so. But sometimes, it's a lot more than that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on page 358, Information and Broadcasting, you will see for the procurement of equipment, $100,000, Mr. Speaker. Over the years, Mr. Speaker, the equipment of the GIS has significantly depleted. The ministry is trying now to restock and to upgrade. And Mr. Speaker, I notice you have modern cameras in your chambers. I'm not sure if it's GIS that provided it, Mr. Speaker, but I know GIS used to be here covering. I see you shaking your head, so I suspect Parliament probably paid for it. But Mr. Speaker, you know, GIS really needs some upgrade in their stock. The last time it happened was under the previous Labour Party Prime Minister, Dr. Anthony, where the Taiwanese embassy provided a substantial amount of equipment to GIS to upgrade it. They have already contributed $49,000 US. This estimates provide another $100,000 US to upgrade the GIS, Mr. Speaker. I've already mentioned, Mr. Speaker, that GIS has worked very hard to bring back Radio St. Lucia. We're presently testing it on digital, so we have RSL digital broadcast online now, and once we can resolve some of the capacity and logistics issues without putting a strain on central government, we will relaunch Radio St. Lucia once again, and St. Lucians will have a Radio St. Lucia they can be proud of. But we'll do it differently this time. Radio St. Lucia, the new Radio St. Lucia, will be a St. Lucia radio station. All the music must be St. Lucian. The programs must be public education. All local content. So if you want to hear foreign music, you don't go to Radio St. Lucia. The Radio St. Lucia that will be relaunched will be all local content, Mr. Speaker, and is very heavily focused on public education and the dissemination of information that the public needs to be for the orderly operation of our society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on page 561, heading 017, Culture and Creative Industries, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm really proud of the work that we've done in the last year for culture and creative industries, Mr. Speaker. Any St. Lucian will tell you, they had to have been proud to see what the Cultural Development Foundation and the ministry did, especially for Emancipation Month. For the first time, this Prime Minister said that he does not want emancipation celebrated the way it has been done in the past, that we have to give it greater prominence. And whereas we used to get about $20,000 a year for emancipation, we got about $200,000 plus for emancipation. And the CDF and Events Company of St. Lucia really made me feel good as a St. Lucian to be at the waterfront on August the 1st and to actually witness the parade that took place and the cultural performances that took place to herald in Emancipation Day. We went to Dennery South, where the first heroine was unveiled, Petronille, Mr. Speaker, as a champion of the slave uprisings, Mr. Speaker. And that meant a lot. Throughout the country, Mr. Speaker, we encourage communities to organize activities to commemorate Emancipation Day. In Babono, in Monrepo, in ancillary canneries, throughout this country, Soufre, we had activities. And I can say to honorable members, this year, August, will be even bigger and better than it was for last year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the La Rose at La Marguerite last year, in this financial year, was extra special. Extra special. Again, ask any St. Lucian and they will tell you they had never seen so much of a focus given to those events. The La Rose Festival, Mr. Speaker, and some people criticize us saying it should be kept in the community and not be brought down into Castries, whatnot. Let me make it say to honorable members, the groups themselves said they wanted to be in Castries. They said they wanted to be in Castries. And they asked us to repeat it. And there's a reason why. Think about it. There are the traditionalists that will want us to remain in the community, and a small group enjoy it, and they really are the purists. But there's a new generation rising that want to mainstream the celebrations. And they believe when they are in Castries, in the middle of the workday, and when they parade around Castries, they said they felt good to see St. Lucians coming out of the business places, clapping them, waving them, people passing in vehicles, blowing their horns. They felt accepted and they felt appreciated. That they would not, and so right. So the solution now is how we can find both. And I've challenged the CDF and them to find a solution where you have both the community celebration, but we also have the national celebrations. So in 1 year we can do it in the big population centers, in Castries, in Vieux-Fort, so where the public is in the numbers and can show the appreciation. Now once we had done it for La Rose, La Marguerite said, you have to do it for us too. So we end up having to also do it for La Marguerite. But La Marguerite was very special last year. We actually had a coronation. And I had never seen a coronation of a La Marguerite queen before. And we actually had a coronation at the Grosley Church. And then they went on to their horse-drawn carriage to have a La Marguerite dinner. And I'll tell you what was even special about the dinner for me. That some of the hotels actually bought tables so the guests can come and see what a La Marguerite dinner was like. And Chef Orlando was the one who did the menu, prepared the food and served in the Grosley Human Resource Center. I had never seen La Marguerite in such, splendor, Mr. Speaker. And I know, I must tell you, say Vive La Marguerite, I almost said that in church during the La Rose Festival. But I can tell you, and the member from Dennery North, he really started because he had the most groups, certainly in La Rose. I think, and also there's a particular young man who beat that drum so well during the festival. It really made us proud to see him, performing. We had never seen such effort being put into the La Rose and the La Marguerite. And of course, Creole Heritage Month, what it means to us as St. Lucians. I don't think last year we got it right in all aspects. One community withdrew at a very late stage. I wouldn't say that it is Monrepo, but they did not stay, and there were some issues, Mr. Speaker, and we will try to do it better this year. We don't always get everything right, but the member for Miku North has told me he definitely wants Monrepo this year to be involved, and we will see it. One of the things I'm very glad about, Mr. Speaker, is how we've worked with all the stakeholders. For Emancipation Day, the relationship we've had with the Rastafarian community, the way we've met with the different groups, the way FRC supports and is deeply involved, the La Rose groups, the La Marguerite groups, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we'll be adding a new activity, Mr. Speaker. From now on, the Prime Minister has said, we must celebrate Labor Day differently, Mr. Speaker. May 1st is Workers' Day, and we must celebrate the workers of the country. We have to celebrate the workers of the country. Now, the Prime Minister, I've already said to him, this year we will, because of how the budget is done, we're having estimates now, policy statement end of April. Monies are not really available until the middle of May. So we will have a challenge how much we can do for May 1st this year. But I can guarantee you, together with the Department of Labor, that will provide a lot of leadership on this, we are going to have, from next year, the biggest celebration for May Day in the history of St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to look at grants and contributions, Mr. Speaker, where we have a total of $15.7 million for that purpose, Mr. Speaker. And one of the important allocations for me is for the development of the creative industries. We usually used to get $500,000 a year. It was increased to $750,000. And for me, it's really important to have such monies available, and I'll tell you why quickly, Mr. Speaker. First of all, the small grants program, where we can make monies available to different groups, different organizations, artists that just need some support to put on a creative or cultural event, whether it's for pageantry, publishing a book, theatrical production, dressmaking. They can apply to the ministry, and I'm appealing to those creatives that need small grants, that this government has made more money available to you, for you to get support, for you to put on your creative expressions. So if you need the support, apply to the ministry and we will assist you. Throughout the communities of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, we want them to be able to express themselves, and we will be providing the support for this. The National Performance Program, Mr. Speaker, again, will be making monies available to ensure community tourism gets the support. Cabaret Crawl, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you, the Cabaret Crawl is one of the most innovative and creative ideas that we've added to the tourism product, Mr. Speaker. So just imagine, you know, that's where people meet. They play dominoes. They argue politics, football, cricket is in the cabarets. That is a distinct Caribbean, you know, experience. Other countries have it too. In England, they call it the pubs. They don't say rum shops. They say the pub. You go to your pub. Before any football match, you go to your pub so you can ready for your football match or rugby match. We have it as the cabaret, the rum shops. But that's quintessentially West Indian and St. Lucia. So we now add into it.
Member for Castries South, you have 10 minutes left.
10? Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to invoke Standing Order 4210 to allow the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister an additional 30 minutes within which to complete his presentation.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 3210 be invoked to allow the Leader of Government Business and Member for Castries South an additional 30 minutes in which to complete his presentation. I now put the question: as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted.
Okay, so Mr. Speaker, I'll try to move quickly because I need to say something about the secrets of Castries South. So I want to have some time for that. Mr. Speaker, another program we have which I'm really excited about is what we call Arts in Public Spaces. And I know Miku North will be benefited from that. I think you would have received your grant already. Mr. Speaker, we have to promote art in public spaces. And the young people that are involved in visual arts, whatnot, this is an opportunity for them to find spaces in their community. Viewfort, the murals on the walls at the field in Viewfort, some other places. And I want you to encourage the young people in your constituencies to apply for the assistance where you could get the support to paint ourselves on spaces, our lives, our stories on spaces. And we will be making the monies available in Babono, Viewfort North, Denry North. And I'm really excited about we doing so throughout the country, Mr. Speaker. And we have monies for this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to move quickly, so I'll skip some of the other exciting programs. Mr. Speaker, Carnival, Mr. Speaker. Remember last year, When we said we were going to have vax mass, people said we were irresponsible, hundreds would die, that we should not do it, Mr. Speaker. But we fought, Mr. Speaker, and I discussed it with my colleagues, with the Prime Minister and colleagues in Cabinet, that the creative sector had suffered the most from COVID, the most. Why? Because creative people need to express themselves. They need crowds, they need audience. COVID restricted and denied an audience for them. So everybody was bottled up within their confined spaces. Creativity cannot flourish in such circumstances. It has to be unlocked. It must be given space, Mr. Speaker. And we wanted Carnival to be able for people to express themselves, the costume designers, the songwriters. We had to do it, Mr. Speaker. And we thought of how could we do it? We thought of vax mass. And then, of course, the Omicron virus came, which made it a little more, accepting for people to gather and to be together. And eventually, Mr. Speaker, we did have Carnival in its traditional way. And even when we said we were going to move from vax mass to traditional Carnival, we were decried again. But we had a vision and a clear understanding of what we wanted to do. I remember the Minister of Health really working with us. Mr. Speaker, I tormented him, Mr. Speaker, to get his ministry to make the adjustments to be able to accommodate us. And he balanced those two demands masterfully between I annoying him every morning and his technical people advising him how it should be done. I don't know how he survived that period, Mr. Speaker, but he will tell you, I used to be at him regularly, so it was a real difficult period for him, Mr. Speaker. But guess what happened? We had one of the best carnivals we ever had, Mr. Speaker, and we had 10,000 visitors that came in for Carnival, making July 2022 our highest arrival month for the year, Mr. Speaker, and because of Carnival. Sorry? Well, the CFO was in Carnival order. But Mr. Speaker, so the government this year has given an extra $1 million for Carnival. It's not enough. We still need more. Why we need more, Mr. Speaker? And I'm saying it loud and clear. So many of my colleague parliamentarians from Strozel all the way are talking about community carnivals. Now, if community carnivals have to be financed and supported, $1 million is not enough. Last year we did not have Junior Panorama, Junior Carnival. There were so many other components we did not have. And 1 million, Mr. Speaker, is not enough, but it is what we have because the pie must be cut fairly and we'll have to make it work. But I'm saying to my colleagues to be a little gentle on me that you won't get everything you need for your community carnivals, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I need to move on, so I'm going to jump to some of the capital project, Mr. Speaker. So I won't have a chance to speak about most of the other stuff, Mr. Speaker. The ministry this year, Mr. Speaker, will be working really hard on certification and training. And I need you to understand why that's needed. If we're going to have a tourism industry that is world class, a tourism industry that have the highest standards, we have to train. We have to spend the money on certification. We train you and then we certify you where you can say that's the levels I have reached. So you demonstrate it and you proudly show that you've been certified. And we have, Mr. Speaker, we made a case to the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, that $20,000 for training was just not enough. Not when we want to build a world-class tourism product. Not when we want to ensure that our people can deliver the highest standards. And he agreed, Mr. Speaker, and he's now increased that from $20,000 to $450,000 for us to spend, Mr. Speaker, on training. So I'm really proud of this. The Tourism Hostess Program, started by the Prime Minister when he was Minister of Tourism and the member for Beaufort South, Mr. Speaker, was Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, and they better than me can explain to you why such a program is important. And I will tell you, for those of you who may have forgotten, the entry of the member of Miku South and leader of the opposition into politics was distinguished, well, into government, by the firing of the tourism hostesses. Remember that in Soufre? Yes. Yeah. Remember that? By firing them. Because from that day, he did not believe that a tourism hostess program is important. But it is important. by training people in the communities who are willing to welcome visitors to their community, to speak about the history of their community, the stories of their community, the struggles of their community, the aspirations of the community, the beauty of the community. That is valuable, Mr. Speaker. The visitors feel more welcome, they feel more connected, and the community feels it is part of the tourism experience, Mr. Speaker. How could you not support a community tourism program? So, Mr. Speaker, it will be brought back. Already we've done some training with the Taiwanese into storytelling techniques, because they do it in Taiwan, and they were down here and decided to teach our people, our trainers about storytelling. How do you create stories about your community to be able to, Mr. Speaker? So allocation is made for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under capital expenditure, Mr. Speaker, would you let me know when I have about 15 minutes left, so I can speak about cash? I have time? Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, it will start in a bit, Mr. Speaker, not just yet. Mr. Speaker, let's look at National Tourism Awards on page 590. Did you hear the member from Miko South last night? Did you hear him? No, I mean, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, he would stand up and ask, why would this government want to spend $150,000 on the tourism awards, and whether or not we could not go and get that money from the private sector instead? $150,000? Let me first of all say to this honorable house that the tourism awards is being hosted in collaboration with two other agencies. The private sector, St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association, they're contributing $150,000. The Tourism Authority, as the chief marketing agency, is contributing, and the ministry is contributing. So it is a joint collaboration. But it is important for us to have tourism awards. And Mr. Speaker, the tourism awards have been named the Jimmys. Now, do you know why the Jimmys? Mount Jimmy is the highest point in St. Lucia. It's the highest you can reach in St. Lucia. And by giving our tourism workers, those who have not been boasted of, those who have not been recognized, that we're giving you a Jimmy, the highest point of achievement in St. Lucia, is a powerful statement to them of our appreciation to them for the successes that this country has had, especially the tourism industry. That we specifically name it the Jimmys. So we name it the Jimmys to say it's not only about the hoteliers being recognized and supported, they will be part of it too. But it's also about saying to St. Lucians that we appreciate what you're doing for the success of this country. How dare you criticize this and think that is a waste of money for us to do such a thing, Mr. Speaker? It reflects the thinking. It's the non-entity thinking, Mr. Speaker. It's the non-entity thinking that is not important for average, ordinary people to rise to the top. It's not important for you to say to people who in their own way contribute. But if you're not of a certain standing, Mr. Speaker, you're not deserving of being recognized. So, Mr. Speaker, the Jimmys will be held on April 26th. And do you know what the theme is? Rethinking tourism. Because we have to rethink it. We have to put our people at the center of it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on page 590, you will see an allocation of $750 for the National Cultural Center refurbishment. The National Cultural Center needs serious refurbishment. And I really hope, Mr. Speaker, and I'm saying it to the member from Castries East, can hear me, that we need to have a proper cultural center in St. Lucia. We need to have one. And a member from Juffa South will tell you, many years ago, when we were doing the development projects with the Chinese, one of them was going to be a cultural center. And I know he had already identified and chosen land. I'm not sure if it had been acquired. He can let us know. In Shock, for the National Cultural Center. So we've had a long desire in the Labour Party to have a proper cultural center in St. Lucia. And we must not let that dream fade away, Honorable Prime Minister. We will have to have a proper building that can host our archives, host our museum, and become a performance area for our creatives in this country. We have to do so. So whilst we are repairing the cultural center, that dream must not die, Mr. Speaker. Community tourism, Mr. Speaker, on page 363. I spoke about the community tourism earlier on when I explained that this government cares. That is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, we are doing community tourism. And under, Mr. Speaker, when I will deal with the policy, I will speak some more about the community tourism. But let me just say quickly, Mr. Speaker, that under the last government, they call it village tourism. And just give me 2 minutes on my 30 minutes, Mr. Speaker. Let me just say something about this. Because the last government did not pass the legislation, did not put the institution in place, but they used all the money for the tourism program. They use all. They did not pass the legislation. They did not set up the institution to do it, but the monies were spent. Some of them, I must tell you, in projects that I think were good. Monies were invested in ancillary canneries, the bed and breakfast, the restaurant. In the Ministry of Tourism area. But some went into putting lights in the Jackmel playing field. I heard some was given to Grozile. I can't even tell you what it was used for. And I mean, it really missed the boat. This is an excellent idea. It is something that started when the Prime Minister was Minister of Tourism. The member from Beaufort South will tell you of the vision of taking tourism to the people. We started heritage tourism. It continued and it continued. Exactly, it continued. Felix Finisterre, Mr. Speaker. And there we had the right meeting of idea, resources, and a lot of those resources, I believe, was not properly utilized. I support what is going on in ancillary canneries. I've spoken to the parliamentary rep about it, and we're going to work to make it come to completion. Again, because of the way it was done, there are issues. There's no money for sewer, because we really cannot throw untreated sewer into the bay from the bed and breakfast and the restaurant. So we're going to find the money to complete the project. We're going to do more work in canneries. And the member from Ancillary Canneries will tell you an entire market and restaurant will be done in canneries. In Grozile, the beach park in Grozile will be done. I cannot give you figures because those have gone out for tender. And so it wouldn't make sense for me to tell you what's allocated for it for obvious reasons. So we're going to continue that. But the good news is the Prime Minister, in discussion with him, said we need more money for more community projects. So he's spoken to the CARICOM Development Fund, and we're going to get another $3 million. And already we've started identifying some of the possible projects. So the Mon lay-by will be replaced. As you know, it's a real, not an eyesore, but also health hazard because it is moving. So we have to rebuild it. We're going to build some performance center areas in Beaufort North, in Serenity Park. Even in Marshall, we're going to redo the Marshall Market and to do something in there for community tourism. I know Leclerc has an interest. There's a very exciting project that the church has submitted to us to put a shrine to commemorate the 3 persons who had been killed there and to create some religious tourism for cruise passengers when they come in. Miku North will be getting a CMOS experience. Denry South, the fish fry had been allowed to just fade away in the last 5 years. It's going to be restored. So there are a number of projects we're looking at. We now need to engage in the southern part of the island in terms of what it is that they want to present for our consideration. So we are constantly looking for more resources for us to be able to spread the community tourism idea all over the island, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, the amphitheaters there'll be 2 in Beaufort North and 1. Now, under the OECS competitive tourism project, the ORTCP, we have a number of activities, and I think $14.7 million is being provided, Mr. Speaker, for that. We will complete the project in Strozel. It was mentioned by the representative for Strozel, the craft market redevelopment. That will happen, Honorable Member. It has gone out for tender, so no figures will be put in there, as you can imagine. The Castries market redevelopment will take place. We're building a container box park where the old marketing board building used to be. That will add to the cruise tourism experience, where people can go in and have various offerings made to them, Mr. Speaker. In Soufrière, we're completing the Old Trafford project, so there'll be more concessionary booths built in Strozel for for the Old Trafford project. I think it's costing $667,000 to complete that project. I think I mixed up Canaries is actually under the ORTCP and not the community tourism. So it's going to be there. And of course, Mr. Speaker, we're going to be doing some work in Marigot, in Castries South, Mr. Speaker. The Marigot Bay waterfront redevelopment. I think all members in here will agree that Marigot is the most wonderful site for the setting sun, and maybe after the Pitos is the most beautiful part of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And Marigot Bay waterfront really needs some redevelopment. So we will be doing a redevelopment of Marigot Bay. And in the next 2 to 3 years, when you go to Marigot Bay, it will be a totally different experience. The beach on the other side, La Basse, an investor has already agreed to put one of the best beach bars in the Caribbean on that, reclaim the beach, restore it to its original size, and put a beach bar there for us. They're also in the process of acquiring lands to build a resort on the hillside, so we will have an entirely different Marigot. The Marigot Bay project is going out to tender. We've done all the drawings, and we're getting ready to go out to tender for Marigot Bay, so that will be an exciting development. When you pass the gas station on Millennium Highway heading south on your right, there's a sharp corner called Asfair, a piece of mountain there. We'll be redeveloping that to create a lookout point. And I must tell you, based on the drawings, I'm really inspired to see this project come to fruition, because it will be a sight to behold when we transform that area, Mr. Speaker, and offer greater opportunities to the people of Castries South, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is an issue in St. Lucia, all the honorable members. Mr. Speaker, can you give me some protection, please? So, Mr. Speaker, we have an interesting problem in St. Lucia. But it's a problem that when we solve it, will create tremendous possibilities. In the increase in the cruise arrivals again, there's a huge demand by cruise travelers who want beach experiences for the day. So right now is overcrowding taking place at Ridgely Beach and at VG. And they're even going to Soufrière now, and Chasney, whatnot, Pigeon Point, whatnot. So we need more beach parks. But when you create a beach park, here what you're doing, the beach boys rent a chair for $20 US a day, sometimes more. The guys who sell the Heineken, the Piton, the guys that sell the barbecue chicken, the roving vendors that sell stuff, make money. So we need to create more beach parks in St. Lucia. We don't have to crowd VG, Ridgely, Pigeon Point, but create more along the coast. So we've started identifying spots. Now, that's not new to us. That started from the last government. But the way they approach it was not structured in a more holistic way. They tried to do something in ancillary alone and not really look at all the possibilities. So we need to look at all the possibilities. And so we started doing that, to look at all the different possibilities. One possibility that came readily to us, and that's why I'm disappointed with the last Minister of Tourism, because he skipped it and then he went to Ansari. Buckeye has a beach park. Buckeye. And for us, it's a natural, it's a low-hanging fruit. Let us upgrade it and can accommodate hundreds of cruise passengers there. I'll be speaking to Soufre. It is a Barron's Drive and Magnitude in that area, how we can create something for the guys from Barron's Drive and then to really run a beach park down in that area. So one of the provisions this year under the ORTCP is the Buckeye Beach Park. We've done some drawings for it, how we can upgrade it, and once we can resolve with Buckeye, we will be able to execute that project. The member from Strozel yesterday asked about training of the vendors that was part of the project. So that is provided for in this year's estimates again, for us to start the training of vendors. And that, like I said earlier, training is really important for us, so we definitely will do so. Mr. Speaker, you know, there's just so much going on in tourism, Mr. Speaker. So much going on. Real exciting stuff, Mr. Speaker. And when we speak and in a policy session, the Prime Minister will make an announcement. Because the opposition has said a lot about GPH, and we sell the port, and we agree that there will not be any cruise port in Vieux Fort, and we move cruise from Castries to Vieux Fort. A lot of talk. Forgetting that the discussions started with him. With him. And, you know, in this business, as much as you want to criticize, sometimes you have the responsibility of government on your shoulder, so you are limited by what you can see. And I want to respect our private sector investors and not see some of what had gone on before. But St. Lucia should have had that project already. Should have had it already. But again, it's how the last government did their business. So we've come in and we've tried to correct some of the issues and to put it back on course. But hopefully, if all goes well, and Cabinet agrees with the proposal, because the negotiating team is still finalizing it, it will make a dramatic transformation of Soufre waterfront, the Bannans Bay area, and the entire waterfront by the government buildings, because it's a really exciting project, and hopefully by the policy statement time in the end of April, we would be in a position to release all the details of it. But I can say to you, Mr. Speaker, that when we do make those announcements and execute this project, it would really add. And I'm already envisaging, you know, if you have the Bannans Fisherman's Village, you have the boardwalk on the waterfront, you know, you have Ansfair, you have Buckeye, you have Ancillary, you have Canaries, you have Soufre waterfront. The whole coast starts to change, and you have the Grosile Beach Park. These are possibilities as well. There's a lot. Sandy Beach, well, that one is an issue that we need to have a discussion with, because I think Invest did a development plan for that area, and there's some very good ideas in it, and we need to move forward. We are also still working very hard to get a cruise development in the south for home porting. That had been spoken about for a long time, and I teased the member from Vieux Fort South once. I remember when we actually boarded a cruise ship in Vieux Fort, because he too was from then trying to get cruise ships to come to Vieux Fort, and I still remember that day, you know, many years ago. And so it is something, because we recognize most of the attractions are in the south, are really in the south, you know, in Strozel, in Soufre, you know, Vieux Fort, whatnot. So there's a lot that can happen, and we can really transform, you know, the entire tourism industry. Now, Mr. Speaker, for the next few minutes, I want to say a bit about Castries South, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, you would have heard members. No, I asked that. Mr. Speaker, you would have heard members said that they've been advised to Chensigweyo to hold your secrets and don't say too much. So I'll be a little constrained by, you know, how much I can say about Castries South, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I must express my sincere thanks in starting to the Prime Minister and to the member for Castries North, Mr. Speaker. I must. I stood in this house as a member of the opposition, and I called on the member from Castries North to please repair the Bassett Joseph Road and the Marigot Road. Marigot attracts significant numbers of cruise tourists and overnight tourists, and the road could not continue to be in the state in which it was in. I spoke to him about the Bassett Joseph Road. Ever since that road was built, Mr. Speaker, almost 40 years ago, it had never been fixed, Mr. Speaker. Never. And I spoke to him about it in opposition, and he promised me that he was going to do something about it. He came into this honorable house in a budget debate, and he actually announced that they were going to repair the road in the financial year, and it never happened. I had to, Mr. Speaker, on 2 occasions, it was redirected, 2 occasions, to see a board being put up saying that the road reconstruction will start, and it been taken down. 2 occasions. I saw that, Mr. Speaker, because...
Member, you have 10 minutes left.
Mr. Speaker, okay, that's fine. I'll try and finish in 10. So, Mr. Speaker, I know how he tried to make, the honorable member tried to get the roads fixed, Mr. Speaker. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that both the Marigot and Bassett Joseph roads have been fixed, Mr. Speaker, and totally reconstructed. And I must say to you, honorable member, the people love you. And the last time you came there, I saw you felt the love of the community of Bassett Joseph. They wanted to keep you, but I had to stop it, Mr. Speaker. But those roads, Mr. Speaker, and I started off by saying that Castries South is a special constituency. It was George Charles' constituency. And, Mr. I would comment. I know you from Monlatok. That's where I knew you. I didn't know you were Bassett Joseph. But the point is, it's really appreciated. It's really appreciated, Mr. Speaker. And we've gotten both the Marigot and Bassett Joseph roads fixed, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask you, honorable member, to deal with some of the other roads, but I'm being reasonable. I know other colleagues also want their roads fixed. I got the 2 major roads in my constituency fixed. So I'm not going to pressure you, Mr. Speaker, honorable member, but we do have other roads that need repair. I still get criticism that the Marigot Road was not completed all the way up to the bay, but at least if we can get some potholing, a little tidying up of it. Up to 2 days ago, I got a text complaining about it. And there's some roads in Cicera, minor roads, just, do some little works on it. I will inform the next round when I will get my major allocation for roads, but I'm very happy and satisfied. Mr. Speaker, Cicera playing field. I came into this house. The previous rep, Robert Lewis, under the Labour Party, got approval to upgrade the Cicera playing field. It was stopped. I spoke to the then Minister of Sport from Denver South about just repairing, because it had been approved by NLA, to just restore it. I said, look, I'm going to get the lights. I'm going to get the poles, Mr. Speaker. I was not allowed to do it, and they would not have just restored the surface. The member from Grosile told me he would take care of it. And Mr. Speaker, it is being done now. And then, it is being done now, Mr. Speaker. And in the next 2 months or so, it would have been totally surfaced and the grass grown, Mr. Speaker. And he has promised that we will also get the lights put in, Mr. Speaker. I'm also going to add to it, Mr. Speaker, an outdoor gym. I already have acquired the gym through the Diabetes and Hypertensive Society and the Church of Latter-day Saints. They've provided the outdoor gym, so we'll have a complete outdoor gym in the corner of the field. We will get the lights, and hopefully some stands will be built in. Think about it, Mr. Speaker. Castries South does not have a playing field, a standard-sized playing field. We have the Marigot playing field, but it is mostly used by Jacmel, Roseau, and what's the other side? Castries South is, some of those other areas. Yeah, Mr. Speaker. So Cicera, which is one of the largest communities in St. Lucia, Cicera, cannot have a standard size playing field. But thanks to the member from Grozile, we will finally have a playing field, Mr. Speaker, that we can boast about, Mr. Speaker. So I'm really, really proud and happy for that. The Bassa Joseph Community Center, Mr. Speaker, the Bassa Joseph Community Center was started under the last Labour Party government, half-built, elections in 2016. It was stopped, and nothing has happened since then. A contract was signed last month, a few days ago, but we're still in March, a few days ago, for the work to continue on the Bassa Joseph Community Center, and for Bassa Joseph now to have a community center. Mr. Speaker, Castries South does not have any community centers except what we have in Fuashu. Think about that. The entire constituency, the only community center we have is what we have upstairs, the public facility in Fuashu, which itself can barely fit 40 people. That cannot be right. That cannot be right. And Mr. Speaker, I've told the Prime Minister, I will work the extra day. I will take the extra flight. I will do whatever I can to help raise the resources so Castries South can get a full complement of social facilities, Mr. Speaker. We will, during this year, continue on the Goodlands Road under the BNTF. It had been started again under the last Labour Party government, and it was stopped. It was stopped, so it's coming back again, and it will be continuing the road down by Madeleine, down to the bottom, all the way to the top of the former George Charles Secondary School, Mr. Speaker. From the top of the hill where you, where you put the barriers, the crash barriers, whatnot. Then, Mr. Speaker, we'll be doing some work at the Lacroix Combined School, putting in a classroom under the BNTF project, Mr. Speaker, and making sure that we provide the children with all that they need, Mr. Speaker. We've done a lot, Mr. Speaker, socially in the constituency, a lot. The Back to School, Mr. Speaker, our Top Achievers program to honor the top performers in the common entrance, Mr. Speaker. The Christmas program is a special thing for us in Castries South, where we give out our hampers to the elderly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also have some creative programs. We have our black cake and sorrel competition, where we have a competition to see who can bake the best black cake and make the best sorrel, Mr. Speaker. And it is for us an exciting time when we bring the community together, Mr. Speaker, to celebrate, Mr. Speaker, the community spirit and everything else, Mr. Speaker. I spoke earlier about the school fees and the laptops. Castries South really benefits from that. You know, our constituency is one where there are few challenged communities, and those programs, the medical bills, the funeral support, the food vouchers, the laptops, the school fees, Mr. Speaker, these make a difference. I know we're all concerned. We don't want people to become too dependent on government. But whilst we're providing training, we're creating opportunities, Mr. Speaker. We also want, Mr. Speaker, we also want, Mr. Speaker, to be able to give them the support so people can enjoy some civilized living. Until they get the job, until they are able to acquire all the skills, they need to have some civilized living. Because if people cannot have any civilized living, they become social, outcasts and deviants, Mr. Speaker. So it's not about, creating dependency syndrome. We must avoid it. But we must also recognize people are human beings, and they must be treated as such, Mr. Speaker. And the support for the schools, I've always helped myself out to support, Mr. Speaker, the schools. I know right now in Soufrière we have Island Chumps going on, Mr. Speaker. And, the minister have left, Mr. Speaker. He stepped out. But to really say to him is a fantastic initiative that he is doing, Mr. Speaker. And I too hope that my schools can also benefit from that. But, Mr. Speaker, in the minutes I have left, and until the Prime Minister comes, Mr. Speaker, you have to let me speak until he comes back in. What's the future? What's going to happen in Castries South, Mr. Speaker? I've said of all the things we're going to do, but, Mr. Speaker, think about it. Cicero Community Center. has been closed for almost 7 years. It's small. It cannot serve a community of that size. The bottom is used as a daycare or preschool. The top is wooden, termite infested, and you have children downstairs. It is so badly, it has degenerated so badly, it's closed for years. You cannot not have a community center in Cicero. You cannot not have one. That just cannot continue. And I've said to the Prime Minister, I will start the process of identifying a site, and I've done so, and to start the drawings and costings for us to have a proper community center in Cicero, Mr. Speaker. The community deserves it. The community deserves it. We cannot have the community with no community center. So Basel Joseph will have one, Cicero will have one, and we'll have to fix Fuasho. In Marigo, under the last Labour Party government, again, under the CDB, we built a preschool, a learning center, and the upstairs, which is supposed to be a community center, has never been completed. Can you imagine how Kasri South was treated? But that's going to stop. That's not going to continue. So we're going to do something about Marigo as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Fuasho is a very special place to me, Mr. Speaker. And I remember growing up, Mr. Speaker, there was never any sporting facilities in the community. Never. Think about it. Never have a feeling for a show, a court. Under the last government, again under Dr. Anthony, we identify a piece of land. The AG is not there, but the piece of land is right next to his home. Well, this is where he used to live. He still visits there every day, though. We acquired that land to put a court for Fuasho when Robert Lewis was a parliamentary rep. Well, Mr. Speaker, I've gotten the drawings for the court and the costing, and we will start the Fuasho court this year, Mr. Speaker. We will start it, Mr.
Remember,
Speaker.
you have to wrap up. You have to wrap up.
You want me to wrap up? Mr. Speaker, I have a lot more to say about the things we will be doing in Kasri South, but I understand that we need to change Sigwe and we need to recognize, Mr. Speaker, that my time is up. But I can say to the people of Kasri South, we promise we will transform Kasri South. We promise that. A lot of work had started under Robert Lewis that was not completed. It will be completed, and we will transform Kasri South. Yeah, and then we will be, Kasri South proud of the representation that it has gotten, Mr. Speaker. Let me end, Mr. Speaker, by once again expressing my support to the Prime Minister for all the assistance he's given me as Minister and as Parliamentary Rep. Let me say thank you to all my colleagues in Cabinet. It's a real joy, Mr. Speaker, to work with this Cabinet of Ministers. I can tell you, it's a joy. There are those who have had a lot more experience, and you can go to them and share ideas and get guidance from them. There are new ones than me, who we talk a lot about where we're going, what we're doing, and it's a real camaraderie that we have, Mr. Speaker. And I enjoy, one of my best days are Mondays to go to Cabinet and to sit with my colleagues, Mr. Speaker. I can tell you, it's a real delightful experience to go to Cabinet on Mondays and for us to work together, Mr. Speaker. So I want to express my thanks to my colleagues and to the Prime Minister. I believe the budget the estimates which was presented is what we need for these times. It really seeks to achieve multiple objectives. And I think the Minister of Finance, the member for Castries East, has gotten it right in terms of what he's planning to do. I just want, Mr. Speaker, to make one appeal, and I'm sure other members share it with me. Mr. Speaker, the medical care in this country, healthcare in this country, has to be placed at the top priority. Every day, Mr. Speaker, persons who need cancer patients, MRI, just over and over, Mr. Speaker. It is overbearing, it's overwhelming, and we need to, Mr. Speaker. And it's one reason why I support what was presented wholeheartedly. When the Prime Minister said this budget is about healthcare and security, I was one of the happiest persons, because I know what we go through as parliamentary representatives, Mr. Speaker. So I look forward to its implementation. function, I will play my part wholeheartedly and with determination to make sure we achieve our objectives for the year. Thank you very much.